My name is Ben. I'm 38, a plumber by trade, and for the last 6 years, I've been living in the house my grandfather built, which is to say, I've been living in a house that always needs something. A pipe joint weeping a slow tear, a floorboard that groans like an old man, a porch light that flickers in a storm. I fix them. It's what I do. It's what I've always done. I was content enough. My days were full of other people's leaks and clogs, their minor domestic crises. My evenings were quiet. A book, a cup of tea, the sound of the rain against the window pane. Some people find that lonely. I found it peaceful. A well-maintained solitude. Then the wedding invitation arrived. It was addressed to me, and to my surprise, it wasn't a generic office mass mail. It was handwritten in a neat, decisive script I recognized immediately. Sarah's. Sarah Miller. She worked in accounting at the same firm my plumbing business occasionally contracted with, mostly for the big commercial jobs. We weren't friends, not really. Coworkers feels too formal, but acquaintance feels too distant. We were orbiting. Sarah was the kind of woman who moved with a purpose. Sharp angles, quick smiles, a voice that cut through office chatter like a hot knife through butter. She wore tailored suits and sensible shoes, and her hair was always pulled back in a severe bun that seemed to defy gravity. We'd exchanged maybe 20 sentences in 3 years, most of them about invoices or the faulty faucet in the employee lounge. I fixed that one for her, remember? She'd brought me a strong black coffee the next day, no sugar, just how I liked it. A quiet acknowledgement. That was Sarah. The invitation felt like a glitch in the matrix. Why me? I considered not going. Weddings weren't my scene. Too much forced cheer, too many people asking when it would be my turn. But then I pictured Sarah, in her severe bun, maybe a little softer at the edges, and felt a strange pull. Curiosity, maybe, or the faint hum of something I couldn't quite name. The day of the wedding was one of those perfect late summer afternoons, the kind where the light is golden and everything feels like it's holding its breath. The ceremony was outdoors, in a manicured garden that smelled faintly of roses and expensive perfume. I arrived early, found a seat toward the back, near a particularly robust hydrangea bush, and tried to blend in. I saw her then, walking down the aisle. It wasn't the Sarah I knew. The severe bun was gone, replaced by soft waves that framed her face. The tailored suit was a white dress, simple, elegant, but still unmistakably Sarah. No frills, no lace. Just clean lines. She looked fragile, not in a weak way, but in a way that made me want to anchor her, like a beautiful, delicate piece of machinery that needed a steady hand. She walked with her father, who looked proud and a little overwhelmed. Her fiancé, a man named Mark, stood waiting at the altar. He was a decent enough guy, I supposed. Worked in finance, wore a watch that probably cost more than my truck. He looked excited, maybe a little nervous. He smiled at her, a wide, confident smile. She smiled back. It was a practice smile, a little tight around the edges. I noticed her hands, clasped together at the front of her dress. They were trembling, just slightly. A tremor I doubted anyone else would notice. I did. I noticed things like that. The small, almost imperceptible flaws in a perfectly constructed facade. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke in a gentle, rolling voice. Words about love, commitment, the journey ahead. Sarah and Mark exchanged rings. Their vows were next. Mark went first, his voice clear and strong. He spoke about shared dreams, about building a future, all the right things. Then it was Sarah's turn. She took a deep breath. Her eyes, usually so direct, darted around for a moment, then settled on Mark. She opened her mouth to speak, and then nothing. A hush fell over the garden. A collective held breath. Her face, which had been pale, went whiter still. Her knees buckled. It was like watching a perfectly balanced structure suddenly lose its keystone. She swayed, a slow, deliberate fall, like a tree in a windstorm, and I moved. It wasn't a conscious decision. My body just reacted. One moment I was in my seat, the next I was out of the row, moving through the scattering guests, a blur of motion toward the collapsing bride. I'd seen it before, this kind of fall, the kind that ends with a cracked head or a broken bone. My job is to prevent things from breaking. I reached her just as her eyes rolled back in her head. My arms went around her, catching her weight as she slumped. She was surprisingly light, like a bundle of dry kindling. I held her against me, steadying her. Her head rested against my shoulder, her soft hair brushing my cheek. The scent of roses, stronger now. She was out cold, but only for a second. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked up at me, disoriented, then focused. Her pupils, usually so sharp, were wide and dark. And then she whispered it. So faint I almost missed it, drowned out by the sudden murmur of the crowd. I was waiting for you to stop me. The words hit me like a physical blow, a wrench thrown into the smooth gears of my understanding. I held her still, as the officiant rushed forward, as Mark reached out a hand, bewildered. I just held her. Her body was still against mine, but her words, those words were a live wire, sparking in the quiet space between us. The next few minutes were a blur. Someone brought water. Someone else fanned her. Mark was asking if she was okay, his voice laced with concern, and something else, something like hurt. I eased her gently to a sitting position on the small bench that had been part of the altar decorations, still keeping a hand on her back, feeling the delicate curve of her spine. "I'm fine," she said, her voice a little shaky, but regaining its usual crispness. "Just a bit light-headed. Too much sun." She glanced at me then, a quick, intense look that held a question and a plea. I understood. I was good at reading unspoken instructions. "Probably dehydrated," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the internal chaos her whisper had caused. "It's a warm day." I stood back, letting Mark take over, letting the other guests fuss. I felt like a stranger in a play I'd accidentally wandered into. My role was done. I'd caught her. Now she was back on her feet, figuratively speaking. I slipped away as discreetly as I'd arrived, heading back to my car. The golden light of the afternoon felt different now, sharper, less innocent. Her words echoed in my head, a rhythmic chant. "I was waiting for you to stop me. I was waiting for you to stop me." What did it mean? Was it a joke, a desperate cry, a delusion brought on by a sudden drop in blood sugar? I was a plumber. I fixed pipe. I didn't untangle human riddles. I drove home slowly, the windows down, letting the wind clear my head. But the wind couldn't touch that whisper. 3 days later, I was back in my routine, fixing a leaky toilet for Mrs. Henderson, replacing a corroded pipe under old Mr. Davis's sink. My hands were busy, but my mind kept replaying the scene, the way she'd fallen, the way she'd looked at me. Then my phone rang, an unknown number. I answered, expecting a new client. "Ben?" It was Sarah. Her voice, usually so composed, had a slight tremor. "Sarah. Are you all right?" I asked, surprising myself with the directness. "Yes. No, I don't know." A pause. Can you come over?" "Over where?" "My place. I need to talk to someone." "And you were there." "I can be there in 20 minutes, I said without hesitation. The feeling of being pulled again. This time I didn't resist. Her apartment was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel, very different from my old house. She opened the door, dressed in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair down, loose around her shoulders. She looked tired and smaller than I remembered. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The apartment was minimalist, spotless, no clutter, everything in its place, like a perfectly organized spreadsheet. "Tea?" she offered, moving toward the kitchen. "Black, no sugar, please," I said, remembering the coffee she'd brought me. We sat at her kitchen island, 2 mugs of steaming tea between us, the silence stretched, thick and heavy. "I called off the wedding," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded. I'd suspected as much. "Good," I said. It was the wrong word maybe, but it felt right. She looked up, her eyes searching mine. "Good?" "If you fainted," I clarified. "It usually means something isn't right." She let out a shaky laugh. "You think everything is a plumbing problem, don't you? A faulty valve, a blocked drain." "Sometimes," I said, "the body knows before the mind does. A drip is a drip. It tells you something's wrong with the system." Another silence. Then she took a deep breath. I wasn't lightheaded, Ben, not really. I was frozen, terrified. I couldn't say the words. The vows I finished for her. Yes, and then I felt myself falling. And I thought, this is it. This is what happens when you ignore the warning signs. You just collapse. She looked down at her hands, twisting them together. "And then you caught me." I did, and I said what I said. Her voice was even softer now, almost inaudible. Do you remember?" "I remember." She looked up, her eyes brimming. "I meant it, Ben. I really did. I was waiting for someone to stop me. Someone to say, 'Are you sure about this, Sarah?' Everyone else was just celebrating, congratulating. But I wasn't sure. I hadn't been sure for months. "Why didn't you stop yourself?" I asked gently. She closed her eyes. A single tear tracked a path down her cheek, because it was easier to keep going, easier to pretend, easier to let the current carry me. Mark is a good man, Ben. He is, and it was also sensible, logical. It made sense on paper. Love isn't always logical. No, she said, opening her eyes. It isn't. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, a small, uncharacteristic gesture of vulnerability. And then you were there, out of nowhere, and you caught me, and it was like the universe gave me an out, the one I was too afraid to take myself. I didn't know what to say. I was a plumber. This was beyond my expertise. I could fix a burst pipe, but a broken heart, a lifetime of suppressed doubts. What happens now? I asked. She shrugged, a small, helpless gesture. I don't know. Mark is hurt, understandably. My parents are disappointed. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Are you? She gave a small, genuine smile, the first one I'd seen that wasn't strained. Maybe a little, but at least I'm not trapped. She looked at me again, that same intense, searching look. Thank you, Ben. For what? For catching me, for not asking too many questions, for just being there. I nodded. It's what I do. No, she said, her voice firm now. It's not. Most people would have just let me fall, or made a big fuss. You just caught me, and you listened. We talked for hours that day, about her life, her dreams, the quiet desperation that had led her to almost marry a man she didn't love. About my life, my quiet solitude, the comfortable rhythm of my days. I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone. About my grandfather, about the house, about the way I saw the world as a series of interconnected systems, always needing maintenance, always needing a steady hand. She listened, really listened. Her sharp mind picked up on details, drew connections. She didn't offer advice, just understanding. It was a new feeling for me, this kind of raw, open conversation, like a rusted valve finally turning. When I left her apartment, the sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The city lights were beginning to twinkle. I felt lighter somehow, like a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had been lifted. The next few weeks were strange. We started meeting for coffee, sometimes at a small cafe near her office, sometimes at a diner near one of my job sites. She'd show up in her tailored suits, and I'd be in my work clothes, smelling faintly of pipe sealant and honest labor. We were an odd pair, but it worked. She was still navigating the fallout of the wedding. Her friends were divided. Her family was still in shock, but she was firm. It was the right decision, she'd say, her jaw set. Even if it hurts for a while. I admired that about her, her unwavering resolve, even when she was clearly hurting. She was like a structure that had been shaken but not broken, just realigned. One evening, I was at her apartment again. She'd called, asking if I could look at her kitchen faucet. It was dripping. A slow, rhythmic plink, plink, plink. It's driving me crazy, she'd said. I can't sleep. I arrived with my toolbox. The apartment was still pristine, but there was a subtle shift. A few books on the coffee table, a plant on the windowsill, small signs of a life being lived, not just maintained. I got to work, pulling out my wrenches, examining the faucet. It's a worn-out washer, I told her. Simple fix. She leaned against the counter, watching me. You always know what it is, don't you? Most of the time. Systems are predictable. People, less so. Is that why you prefer pipes to people? She asked, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. I paused, a wrench in my hand. Maybe, less complicated, less messy, but less rewarding. I looked at her then, really looked. The soft waves of her hair, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the quiet strength in her posture. She was a woman who had almost made a terrible mistake, and then, at the very last second, had chosen herself. Sometimes, I admitted, the most complicated things are the most rewarding. I finished the repair quickly. The drip stopped. Silence fell. A different kind of silence this time. A comfortable one. Thank you, Ben, she said, her voice soft. You fix everything. Not everything. No, she agreed. But you fix what you can, and you show up. She reached out then, her hand resting lightly on my arm. Her touch was warm, electric. It wasn't a demanding touch or a flirtatious one. It was just there. A simple connection. I don't know what I'm doing, Ben, she confessed, her gaze dropping to our hands. With my life. With anything. That's okay, I said, my voice rougher than I intended. Most of us don't, but I feel like I'm finally starting to figure out what I don't want. She looked up, her eyes bright. And that feels like a start, I nodded. A start. A small, sturdy foundation. And I know I don't want to be alone, she added, her voice barely audible. My breath hitched. The air in the quiet kitchen suddenly felt charged. Me neither, I said. the words surprising even myself. I, the man of well-maintained solitude. She smiled then, a full, genuine smile that reached her eyes. The kind of smile that could make a man believe in something new. She leaned in, slowly, deliberately. I met her halfway, our lips met. It wasn't a dramatic kiss, not a movie kiss. It was soft, tentative, full of unspoken questions and quiet answers. It tasted faintly of tea, and something new, something hopeful, like the first rain after a long drought. It was a kiss that felt earned, like a perfectly executed repair. We started building something then, Sarah and I. Not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with quiet moments, shared meals, long conversations about nothing and everything, weekends spent fixing up my old house, her sharp mind making sense of my grandfather's eccentric blueprints, her capable hands helping me sand down a worn banister. She helped me replace the porch light. It flickered a few times, then settled into a steady, warm glow. There, she said, stepping back, wiping her hands on her jeans. No more ghosts in the machine. Just us, I said, putting my arm around her. She leaned into my touch, fitting perfectly against me. Just us. The house still needs things. Always will. A loose floorboard here, a drafty window there. But now, when I fix them, I don't feel like I'm just maintaining solitude. I feel like I'm building a home. A home for us. And sometimes when I'm working, I catch her watching me, a soft smile on her face. And I remember the day I caught her, the day she whispered those words, and how a faulty system, a broken moment, can sometimes be the very thing that sets you free to build something real.